voice is breaking a bit. Can you please check once?
Oh my god. Okay, let me check. Is it for everyone?
Yes, it's
Oh
breaking
my
quite
god.
a bit.
Okay, so 1 second, let me check. So बोलता नहीं कड़ी change my voice. Okay, sorry for inconvenience, sir. Can you hear me properly right now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for inconvenience. Okay, let me again share my screen. So what I'm saying that our learning objective, so in our second webinar, our learning objective is this first one is understanding the various swing configuration and their uses. After that, how to estimate battery weight. After that, iteration method.
One second, your screen is not visible, Umesh.
Array. Is it for 1 second?
Oh, yes, it is visible now. Oh, it's gone again. Okay,
One
no
second.
problem, Umesh. Umesh, if you are facing issues, if you are facing network issues, I'll share my screen. No problem.
Okay, yeah, sure. No, but there is a left. 1 second, okay.
Yeah, it's visible.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, now I think it's stopped. So let me again share my screen.
I have shared screen. You can continue, Umesh.
Okay. No, but okay. So after that, so what we discussed that learning objective. So fourth learning objective is how to choose motors and battery according to our weight estimation, and after that, into to wing design. Okay. So next is the wing configuration. So let's start. Okay, so in this topic you will get some idea about design of an aircraft, like how the wing attach to the fuselage in a different way, and how the design of a wing varies from aircraft to aircraft according to the mission parameter. Okay, so first first configuration is dihedral angle. So as you can see here, can you see cursor?
Yes.
So as you can see here, this is a front view of an airplane, and wing and wing of this plane is slightly tilted from this horizontal, this local horizontal. So this called dihedral angle, and this is this horizontal stabilizer is the same incline, and in this lower figure, as you can see, the the wing is slightly tilted downward, so it's called an anhedral angle. So this is the concept of a dihedral angle and anhedral angle. So what is the advantages of this? So it's increase the stability of an aircraft. So how it increase the stability? So let me share the okay. So this is the photo. Here you can see the airplane which is roll positive, and for stability we want some negative roll, right, for some stability. So as you can see, the projected area of this part is higher than this. So the lift generated by this part will be higher than this. Okay, so the the airplane have a tendency to roll negative according to this. So this is the benefit of a dihedral angle. So that's why we create a dihedral angle in some aircraft for gain some stability, for increased stability. Okay, so this is concept of a dihedral angle, and after that the next is step. Okay, so as you can see this third figure, this is how typically taper look like. So taper is something like if you go from root to tip, the chord of this wing is decreasing, gradually decreasing. So this is called a taper wing. So and this is a rectangular wing. There is a no taper, and this is elliptical wing. So what is the advantages of this taper? Uh,
Umesh, your voice is not speaking. Umesh, don't worry. I'll take over. You fix your like net connection कोई issue नहीं है. I'll take over. Um, so, Akshat, please share the screen. So I do not have the slides.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so we were in taper. So before we go to why taper reduces induced drag, I want to remind you something, and like what is exactly the reason for induced drag. For I mean, I'll let you answer that question. So Gaurav, can we have that question? Oh, yeah, we are like Ali. I mean, don't worry, like we are giving you a poll there. You can answer it. So yeah. Is there any doubt, Ali? If you have any doubt, you can unmute. I don't know. So yeah, please answer this question. That will help you to understand why exactly the taper increases the, I mean, reduces the induced drag. So the question is, when will the induced drag be lower? If the pressure in the tip, like between the upper surface and lower surface, is more or less? So yeah, 3 for more. I'll wait for a few more answers, guys. Everyone, like today is like pretty like big thing, so like it will take some time. So it would be better if you answer a bit quicker. Okay, we have 7 answers. I'll wait till 10 at least. Okay, like we got 7 responses. I'll just like, okay, so no issues. So basically, the induced drag will be lower when the pressure difference will be lower. And why is the reason? As you remember in the induced drag section, we had covered that the reason for the induced drag is a downwash. And why does downwash occur? When there's a flow of air from the like bottom of the wing to the top surface of the wing due to the pressure difference. So more the pressure difference, more the induced drag. So yeah. Now how does taper help us? Akshat, next, like that image, yeah. So this is actually elliptical wing, not exactly like tape. I mean, you can say taper, but I wanted to give you a very better like example so that you appreciate it. So the thing is, for an elliptical wing, if you can see, the pressure distribution is given in that chart. Uh, there is minimal pressure at the tip, and because of that, the like distribution is almost continuous, and there are no jumps in the pressure. So the I mean the thing which happened in that non like in the rectangular wing, it won't happen here. That pressure difference. That is the reason we say like actually, I mean, if you have a look at World War II planes, they will be mostly elliptical. I mean, they just discovered that technology and use it everywhere. So, like, that's something. Yeah, and it, I mean, reduces induced drag by a lot. You remember we had that equation of induced drag. It is CL square by pi EAR. So that E is also Ostwald's coefficient. So basically, that's where this E is what that accounts. You know that E is greater for and better pressure distribution. You can say. So like for this E is 1 and all that. So yeah, trade-off. Well, obviously, manufacturing difficulties. You can't have elliptical wing made very easily, right? So,
Why is it difficult to manufacture a elliptical wing?
yeah, it's Athava, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we actually manufacture a wing? Let me like tell you. So, I mean, in RC plane, I'm telling. So, this is actually RC plane based. So, if I give you examples of World War II planes, don't don't think it is based on that. But yeah. So, how we do that is we have a spar. So, that spar is that middle section. I mean, it's a rod thing, and in the spar we create a frame. I mean, not frame. There are, I mean, various airfoil shaped ribs, and on that ribs actually, like we distribute it in such a way that the shape is actually formed. So you can think of it as like one rod and many airfoils kept on it. So for rectangular, if you see, it's pretty easy to create a rib system. So even if there are two, the shape is maintained. But for an elliptical wing, you really would need a lot of ribs, and also to sustain that much kind of that those rib distribution. I mean, creating those rib distribution and sustaining it, like crashes will easily disrupt them. So that's the reason it's not that easy. Like, did you understand? Like, that's how we actually create a wing. That's why it's not very easy to explain.
And
Uh,
for like
yeah,
maybe not related, why don't commercial airliners then use elliptical wings?
same reason. See, manufacturing is a big issue. I mean, it's not a like small issue. Like for small RC planes, if we have okay, like you know Depron, right? We actually built a lot of Depron planes in our club, and we just fold it off, and it's very easy to manufacture. So that's rectangular. Yeah, because when we just fold it up, we don't care about the taper and all.
Yeah.
Now for airline, we have this huge thing, okay, and they need to make sure that their structure is stable, and it is not too difficult to manufacture. If they keep it too difficult to manufacture, now, so their like production line will fail. We don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so elliptical used to be used in World War II planes, but then they say like this discovered even slight taper is good enough. Like this tapered wing, the third image, that's not that difficult to manufacture. And if you can have a look at the airlines, they use slightly tapered wings. I mean, almost all of them use. If you have a look at them, even the image that what's it called, icon in the top right of the slide, if you can see there's a slight taper to that image also. So even
Yeah.
that much taper gives you 0.9 of Ostwald's coefficient. That's a pretty big decent number. Elliptical gives you 1. I mean, it's a trade-off. You don't need to go that much towards efficiency. So
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
yeah. So
Do we use the same airfoil or in the whole elliptical wing, or is it like we make the chord smaller, or is it we change the airfoil?
we make the chord smaller. For changing the airfoil, we have this aerodynamic twist, which is about to come. Don't worry about that. Like it's I guess a few slides down the line, we'll discuss that too. Okay. Any more doubts? Yeah, like yeah, trade-off we already discussed, manufacturing difficulties. So let's move ahead. Oh, nice. Geometric twist already. So for geometric twist, like what exactly it is like as Shubham asked, do we use the same airfoil? So for this case, even in geometric twist, we do use the same airfoil, but across the section, we kind of keep it at different angle of attack. I mean, not exactly angle of attack, different angles of incidences, kind of. So the root section, as you can see in the image, will be at a particular angle, and the tip section will be at a negative twist. We do not use the positive twist, like positive geometric twist. That's not exactly very beneficial. We'll discuss why, but we use negative ones, and yeah, it's a continuous distribution after that. So I hope you get the idea. The image is more like my words were not be very like effective. Just have a look at the image. So advantages of this is like it reduces induced drag again, and I want someone from the attendees to unmute and answer why do you think it will reduce induced drag, because we just discussed that. So can anybody answer this? Okay, I think it's like not that easy. So consider this way, okay, when it is moving at its like it is designed in this way, okay, like so when it is using moving at its cruise angle of attack, usually the tip section will be in such a way that it generates almost negligible lift. And how does that relate to induced drag? So what exactly is lift? It's the pressure difference, right? Pressure difference between the top surface and the lower surface. That's exactly how the lift works. So at the tip, the lift distribution is pretty low. So at its like design angle of attack. So when it is actually moving at its equilibrium position and all those things. So in cruise conditions. And if you have that thing in mind, you can see that the pressure is almost zero on the top and bottom. So the pressure distribution again becomes pretty continuous. So that's how you reduce the induced drag using geometric twist. And so I hope this is clear. And the second point, stall happens from root to tip. Now, why exactly is this true? So, okay, like why exactly is first thing we'll discuss. So, if you are moving, so consider yourself your plane slowly increasing the angle of attack from 0 to some say 10 degree. I mean 10 degrees is low, but still for our discussion it's okay. Suppose it achieves at some 5 degree or something. You'll see that suppose like for this airfoil, particular airfoil, the stall angle is 5 degree. So when it's slowly moving from 0 to 10 degree, you'll see that when it achieves 5 degree, the root will stall immediately. But the tip will still be at a relative angle of attack of less than 5 degree. So it does not stall. So the tip will only stall when the angle is so much that even that negative twist angle is compensated. Now, why is this important? Like, for why is this important? I'll first ask Gaurav to put a question on the poll chat thing. Okay, where do you think the control surfaces of the plane will be located? Gaurav. Yeah. Guys, more responses. There's a lot of content to cover. We have not even started weight iteration. So, yeah. Okay, 7 responses, 8 responses. Okay, last time it stagnated at 7, so this time I'll take 8. Yeah. So, yeah, tip. And would someone like to unmute an answer, or else I'll give the answer? I don't mind. But this is something I feel someone would enjoy giving answer. Like, would someone like to unmute an answer?
Control surfaces being at the wings, you will get larger moments, like a longer momentum, so they will be more effective in producing an impact or desired result. Maybe.
Yep, good, very good, Atharva. So that's the reason it's placed at tip. And like one more thing, one of like when we were actually discussing this with my when I was discussing this with my team member, like the person presenting and all those people, they had this doubt that we can have a larger aileron. So control surface basically is aileron. So yeah, we can have larger displacement of those aileron for larger lift, and then we can bypass this problem. But you see, when we have this larger displacement sort of thing, you are increasing the drag also. So this is something. So it's always a thing, you need to reduce drag at all costs. So yeah, larger torque is something we aim for, and that's why it's placed at the tip. Now, if the tip stalls first, that would be an issue, right? So you can't maneuver it. Then how will you correct it? So like if you want to maneuver if now don't consider RC plane. RC plane is okay, like it will crash, that's okay. But take a fighter jet, your tip stalled, your control surfaces are useless, you are in a combat situation, and you can't roll out of danger. I mean, that's like that's scary. So yeah, that's how we that's the reason we have some twist. You will see in the examples that I have actually like mentioned one fighter jet which has this twist. And again, manufacturing difficulty. I mean, if Taper had some manufacturing difficulty, this guy has 10 times more difficulties. Taper, at least they were all in same line. For twist, it is pretty different. Yeah, any questions here? Okay, all seems well. Next, aerodynamic twist. So geometric twist, as I told you, the airfoil was same, but it was just inclined at some angles. For aerodynamic twist, so the here we even change the airfoil. Like we choose airfoil of very like similar nature, and we kind of transition it from root to tip. And everything, the effect and all those things are same. Like yeah, I mean that's just the thing. You can show the advantages and disadvantages. So yeah, that one question does come out, like why like use geometric twist? I mean, sorry, why use aerodynamic twist when we have geometric twist at our hand and all? I'll leave that to the audience if they want to answer or if they want to think about this or something. I would like to I would like the participants to think about it. It is
What
something.
exactly is being twisted here? Like, what is like in geometric twist? It was like the tip is at a different angle, but over here, what is the twist?
Yeah, so airfoils are different. So you see, we started at the root with a different airfoil, and at the end, the airfoil changed.
Oh, the section only of the airfoil is.
Yeah, that changed.
Oh, okay, so that is aerodynamic twist.
Yeah, we kind of reduce camber from the root to tip, giving the same effect. The lift is lower at the tip and more at the root. And again, the same things, same advantages, same trade-offs. But it has one unique thing, and I would like the participants to think about it. We'll move ahead because it will there's some kind of homework you can ask me if you're not able to figure out after the lecture, after the webinar. Yeah, next, sweep. Now this is I mean pretty common thing in both RC planes and in big aircrafts. Sweep is something which I particularly don't like using in RC planes, but okay, don't take my thing for that. So advantages of sweep are simple. Like when it's mostly for higher velocity plane. So when your velocity of the plane is too high, what happens is when it is near Mach number, suppose it's 0.8, its velocity 0.8 Mach number. What happens is the air actually speeds up in the upper surface of the airfoil and slows down in the lower surface. But in the upper surface, when it speeds up, it might reach Mach number 1. Now, your plane is not traveling at Mach number 1, but because you're at one point in your airfoil, the air actually reaches Mach number 1, it causes a large amount of wave drag. So this Mach number in which it's traveling, it's called the critical Mach number. Now wing sweep, what it exactly does is, it reduces the critical Mach number. And how? Well, the wind coming towards the plane is now, towards the airfoil, is now not directly to it. It's at an angle. So the velocity the airfoil is actually encountering is a component of the wing, v cos theta. Suppose the sweep is at 45 degrees, so it's like v into cos 45, v by root 2. So that's how it's not allowing the wind to reach Mach number 1 in its upper curve. Now this is not really very effective for us. Our planes travel at RC plane travel at 20 meter per second and nowhere near the Mach number. So that's the reason I don't enjoy using it. But it has one more advantage, and it's it does provide some amount of stability, which is 10 degree of sweep is almost proportionate to 1 degree of dihedral. Now the stability effect is pretty low. It's not exactly that noticeable, but yeah, it does provide one. If you use if you see wing only configurations, it does rely a lot on delta wings, which is also, and it sweeps, it uses a lot of wing sweeps also. So yeah, this is because of some amount of stability, this is the we use. Now yeah, so trade-off, as I discussed, we do not really need that. 1 degree dihedral is, I feel, way more easier to do, because you see, if we sweep it, we are actually making it way more difficult to manufacture. Dihedral is not that difficult to manufacture. So yeah. Next. Yeah, now this was the majorly this was devoted to designing the plane. Now why did we go through all this? Now I wanted you to appreciate that. Next slide. Have a look at this. As I told you, this is a F-22. Okay, this is F-22 Raptor. Now, as I told you, this is a twisted plane. The wing is clearly twisted. It's a geometric twist. Now, you can easily say why do you need a geometric twist? Now you know that from the plane, you can easily analyze the mission parameters. You can guess that this plane is for high maneuverability. And yeah, so because if it has if it is in high angle of attack situation, it can still maneuver and all those things. So by seeing the wing of the plane, now you can guess its mission parameters. Now have a look at the second one. This is actually a tricky case, so I just wanted to include it because it's a bit of tricky question. Why do you think we would use an anhedral instead of dihedral for this plane? Anybody wants to try? Because actually we had kind of skipped that part in the stability, that why high stability is also kind of a disadvantage.
Because when the plane was made, it was already very stable. So it if you have very stable plane, then you cannot turn very fast.
Yep. Yeah. That's why we actually like do not keep dihedral or straight. We keep an anhedral, which makes it slightly more unstable. So higher the stability, more resistance to the controls. You do not want the plane to be too resistant to the controls too. Like that's a disadvantage, right? So yeah. So you can again guess that it requires high maneuverability from seeing the wings. Now this is pretty simple. Like this is a few simple things which I wanted to show you. But now the really hard things come. Next slide. Like, can you go to the go from mission requirements to the plane? Like again, from seeing it, and you can like realize that it's a high payload carrying plane. So the wing like area is this etc etc. That's easy. Like that's something which you will easily understand. But can you actually like design a plane from mission requirements? Now that's the difficult part, right? If you are given your high maneuverability, carry a huge gun as a payload, able to counter its back thrust, can you like actually visualize this plane? That's not easy. So we are not exactly going to, going to teach you to design a military aircraft or something. But even for RC planes, if I give you a mission parameter to carry a payload of 500 grams, to have a maneuver like endurance of 10 minutes, to the maximum runway provided to you is 1 kilometer. Can you from that uh, design your RC plane so easily? So that's something which we are going to discover in the upcoming slides. Uh, yeah, I think I'll hand over to Akshat from here.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. So right now we have seen that the different wing configurations for different planes, like how do they affect the performance of an aircraft. But now what we need is we need to design our own airplane. So we need to choose some starting point to design our airplane. Like, so the first starting point to design our airplane is to estimate the weight of the airplane as a whole, and as well as the different components which we are going to use in our airplane. So weight is the starting point for our design. So let's go into that. So a very important part of weight estimation of for any kind of plane which we do is a historical database. So what a historical database is, historical database comprises the data of many aircrafts which have been made for similar mission requirements or a bit different mission requirements, and then on the basis of those we start off designing our own plane. So this is an example of the data of an airplane which was designed in a competition called Skyrush. So this is the weight of the aircraft, and this is the structural weight. What structural weight is? Structural weight is the total weight of aircraft minus the propulsion system weight, the battery weight, and the payload. This is the wingspan of the aircraft. So this is the kind of data which we collect for every plane and prepare a total historical database of 200 or 300 type of planes, and then we select the particular factors which we need to incorporate in our airplane design. So what we start by for weight estimation is what we call as the first iteration. So let's see what the first iteration is. Yeah, so weight of an aircraft can be majorly divided, as I just told, into 4 different parts. The first one is the structural weight of the aircraft. Next one is the propulsion system. Propulsion system contains the propellers, the motors, as well as ESCs and all those avionics type of thing you can include in that. But just beware that if you are including avionics things into propulsion, you also have to see the historical database on the basis of that. Like in your historical database also, propulsion weight should contain avionics. Sometimes in some historical databases we also include avionics in the structural weight, so we need to take care of that. The other part is the payload, which is mostly given as a mission objective to us. And the third part is the battery, or that is the energy supply which we need for our aircraft. So I'll want to have a quick question over here. So I'll ask Gaurav to just give it a poll to us. Just a minute. Yeah, so the question is like, okay, so it's a multi-correct question basically. So which of the following will be directly or indirectly determined by your mission requirements? Structural weight, your propulsion weight, battery, or your payload? So let's say I've got 4 responses till now. Yeah, all right. So most of you are answering payload, but I will want to emphasize one thing, that the payload is directly given as our mission objective, right? So we are basically given that this much amount of payload our aircraft has to carry. But what also depends on our mission requirements is the battery. Like we need to specify the battery requirements, the battery specifications on the basis of mission parameters, on the basis of payload and the other things like the range and endurance. We need to specify what our battery will be. So basically these two parts of the weight of the aircraft, that is the structural weight and the propulsion weight, will be based on the historical data which we just discussed about the historical database. So these two components in this first iteration, that is the starting point of our weight estimation, we will get these two components from the historical data, and these two parts of our weight estimation will be given by in accordance with the mission parameters. That is, the payload is a direct mission parameter in most of the cases, and battery will be dependent on the other parameters which are given to us as a mission. So let's move ahead here. Yeah, so how exactly do we get this structural and propulsion weights? So we know that we need to take weight ratios. So why do we need to take weight ratios? It is because like we deal with different aircrafts and they are not identical in their design. Like, so we can't just say that this much amount of weight we have to deal as the structural weight and this much amount of weight will be the propulsion system weight. So what we need to use is we need to use the weight ratios. That is, there are two weight ratios mainly which we use in this case. The first one is the structural weight ratio. That is the structural weight of aircraft divided by the total weight of aircraft. And the second weight ratio which we majorly use is the propulsion system weight ratio. This is the weight of propulsion system divided by weight of total aircraft. So why do we so this is the thing that we get from the historical database majorly, because we take many planes, they will have different weights, different total weights of the aircraft, and we just calculate what is the ratio of the structural weight or the propulsion system weight with respect to the total weight of aircraft. So that's why we use ratios here. The we can't directly use the exact values of structural and propulsion weight. Yeah, so let's see what we have. So if we write the total weight of the aircraft as a sum of the 4 different components, that is the structural weight, the propulsion weight, payload, and the battery. So we can write this equation, and by incorporating the structural weight and propulsion weight ratios which we just discussed, we can make the equation look like this. So here you can see that the main part which we want to identify for our aircraft is the total weight of aircraft. This we will get from the historical database. This is also from the historical database, and this is directly given as a mission objective as we discussed. So what remains is this weight of this battery. So we need to figure out how will we calculate the weight of this battery to move any further in our weight estimation process. So let's see what weight of battery we need to have. We have this formula for weight of battery. So before explaining anything on this formula, I will just want you to look over this formula once, and we'll have a quick poll here. Yeah, so you can share the poll, Gaurav, I guess. Yeah, so the question is, how is this formula derived? I'll let you see the formula. Just a second. Yeah. So how is this formula derived? Like by equating energy, by equating power, or by equating the weight? This is basically with respect to the mission requirements and what battery can provide us. So yeah. Yes, so I have 6 responses here. All right, I move ahead. So yeah. So some people are answering that we equalize the weight of weights to get this formula, but I would like to tell you that we don't know the weight of battery as well as we don't know the weight of total weight of the aircraft. So in no way we can just go about equalizing the weights of different components or equalizing weights in any way. So those people who are answering that we get this formula by equating the energy or by equating the power, they both are correct. So in some way what we are doing is, like, we know the cruise condition, right? We discussed it in the weak material which we provided. So what cruise condition we have, like in the condition of cruise, we have lift is equal to weight and thrust is equal to drag. So what actually the battery has to provide us is the thrust to overcome the drag, right? To move forward, to move the plane forward. So what we can write thrust as, we can write thrust as W upon L by D. So this part here is the thrust which the battery has to provide, which the, or more specifically, the propellers has to provide us. The propulsion system have to provide us. This is the amount of that thrust. And into velocity gives us the power requirement. That is force into velocity. Thrust is the force basically which the propellers are providing us. And multiplying that with the velocity, we get the power required. And multiplying that with the flight time, we get the total energy which is required for our for the complete cruise flight. So, and what is this SED? So I would like to tell you that this SED stands for specific energy density. So what specific energy density is, like it is the total, and it is the energy per unit mass which a battery can provide us. It is basically the characteristic of a battery most of the times. And so this is a very important quantity, and let's have a quick poll over this. I would like you to search what is the value of this, what is the approximate value of this SED. So let's have a quick poll here, Gaurav. Yeah. So I would like you to search it up, like which of the following are acceptable values of SED, that is the specific energy density of a battery, and beware that it is written in the units watt hour per kg. So just search it up, guys, and let's see if you can get the correct value, the correct acceptable value for specific energy density. I'll wait for a bit here because you have to search it out. Yeah, it would be good if you guys answer it quickly because we have lots of things to cover today. All right. Yeah, so I can see that many of you are having trouble in searching it up, getting the exact value, but two people who have answered it as 100 and they are quite correct. The acceptable value of SED lie mostly in the range of 100 to 150 watt hour per kg. Yeah, so three people have found it correctly. No issues. If you are facing issues in getting such data, we will provide some sources in the resource material, in the resources of the weak material, and we'll get you that. Yes, four people have got it correct, right? Okay. So let's move forward. Yeah, so here we have seen that this is the weight of battery which we have got here. So this specific energy density when divided by the, like when we divide the total energy required by the specific energy density, it gives us basically the mass of battery, right? And it depends on the units of this SED. Like if in place of kg we have newtons, so we will get the weight of battery here. All right, so having said all this, I want to give you a warning here. Like, do not forget to add the safety factor here while taking the weight of battery. Now, what is safety factor? So we should notice here that we are doing some quite idealistic things here. So so first thing is that what we have done here is it is just the cruise part of our mission. Like, so most of times your mission will not only include the cruise part. So first you have to take off from a certain location, and then you have to cruise, and then you have to land at a certain location. Also your mission can also have some other components also in it. Like these are the three main components. So if you consider this equation, if you see it clear, if you see it properly, so you will get that we are also only including the cruise part of our flight in this energy requirement. So that is not the exact thing which we want to do. So we also need to include like we will also expend some energy in the takeoff and landing phase of our mission, right? So that is what something we have to incorporate. Also, the components are not always quite efficient. Like you can't consider like a battery will give you energy at its 100% efficiency. It's never the case. It's almost, in most of the cases, the battery efficiency is near 90%. So you also need to incorporate this while calculating the weight of battery that by the energy required. Also, we are calculating, like, this is the actual power which our aircraft requires for the cruise condition, right? So but what is giving it the power, like what is giving it the energy? The propulsion system is providing it the energy, but our propulsion system may also not be 100% efficient, and it is the case most of the times. The propeller efficiency, the propulsion system efficiency we call it, it is nearly 40% in most of the cases. So we need to include all those things, and that comes into the safety factor. So while calculating the energy required or while calculating the weight of battery in this step, we need to incorporate the safety factor, which is quite important. So never forget that. And I will just tell you the acceptable or near value of safety factor which we generally use. It is about 0.36 or 0.4 basically. So yeah, so this is how we have got the weight of battery. And also one more thing, like, okay, so we'll move ahead. Yeah, so it looks quite easy. Like we have got the weight of the battery what we require. So, and on the basis of weight of battery, we will get the other specifications of battery and we'll choose a battery. So it looks too easy, right? So can anybody unmute and say, like, what can be the problem with this analysis, with this estimation? Yeah, the way we calculated the battery weight. So is there some issue with it? Like, is there something which we are missing? All right, so I'll tell it. Like, what happened is the weight of battery, as we saw, depends on the total weight of the aircraft, right? So we saw in the previous equation that the weight of battery was depending on the total weight, but But that is what we are looking for, right? We don't know what will be the weight of our space, what will be the weight of our aircraft in the beginning, right? So we need to get through this, like how can we calculate the weight of battery if it depends on the total weight of our aircraft in the starting, because we don't have the total weight of aircraft. So what we do here is we again go to the historical database, we search up for the aircrafts or the planes which have done similar kind of missions or have satisfied the similar mission requirements for as our problem statement, and we select that total weight as our initial weight. So what weight we use in that weight of battery equation which we just saw in the previous slide, we use that initial weight which we have taken up from some other airplane which has previously encountered such mission requirements and has satisfied them. So we take up that total weight as the initial weight of our iteration, and let's see what happens now. If anybody has any doubt in this part, you can unmute and ask, because we are going to see its implication in next few slides. Okay, I'll wait for a second here. Okay, so I see no doubts. Let's move forward. So here is where the iteration pops in. So do you understand like that we chose our total weight for our aircraft depending on the historical database. We calculated the weight of battery, right? So what will happen now is the weight of battery has changed. The weight of battery might not be the same which was used in this particular spacecraft, in particular aircraft. So we will go over this loop again. On the basis of weight of battery, we will calculate the total weight again. We will again go to the weight of battery, and we will again get the total weight from it. And this is the what is the loop. This is the what is the weight iteration loop of for an aircraft that is being explained here. So we'll look at an example at the end of this session on weight iteration, and you'll get things quite clear in that. So this is how iteration takes place. Like we select the total weight, we select the battery weight, and then we again go to the total weight, and then again to the battery weight. This is the thing which we are going to do. So how do we use these numbers? Like what stuff have we got from the first iteration? So we have got a preliminary weight of battery, the first weight of battery which we have obtained from the equation which we saw in the slides. We have also got two more things, that is the weight of structure and the weight of propulsion system. How have we got them? So we know from the historical database the ratios. We know the structural weight ratios and the propulsion system weight ratios for the aircraft. So we take that ratios from the historical database. Also, we also remember that we have taken our total weight for our aircraft in the first iteration part. So we multiply it with the specific ratios and we get the total structural or the total propulsion system weight. So let's now go about choosing our different components for our aircraft. So let's start with the propulsion system. So what is the main component of a propulsion system is motor. So let's see how we select a motor. So this is a particular sheet which provides us the analysis of a motor, like the different parameters of a motor. So one thing I would like to note here, to tell you here, is like consider here to focus on throttle here. So what does throttle mean? Throttle means like how much percentage of the actual power of the motor we are using. So if we use the motor at about 100 or 90% throttle, it has quite possibility that the motor will be damaged. So this is not an advisable part to operate a motor at about 90% or 100% efficient, 100% throttle. So we need to keep that also in mind. So what we basically do, we generally take up this range, like 50 to 60% throttle we need to take up for our motor to function properly and to avoid any damages to motor. Also, we need to look up the thrust which a motor can provide here. So these are the different values of thrust. So you can see at 40% of throttle, this much amount of thrust this particular motor is providing, and this is for different amounts of throttle, so we get this much amount of thrust here. So there's also one more thing, that is the thrust to weight ratio. So note here that thrust does not mean that whatever weight you are carrying or whatever is the weight of your aircraft, you will need to get that much amount of thrust. So that is not the case. There is a parameter called thrust to weight ratio, which is defined differently for different types of planes. Like for that is basically the like for how much amount of thrust we require for per unit weight of the total aircraft. So that is about 0.75 for RC plane, which we are going to use in our course most of the time. I would also like you to tell that for military aircrafts it is mostly greater than 1. And why is that the case? Because military aircrafts can also perform a vertically upward motion, like the plane can become completely vertical and move up. So for that need you need thrust more than its weight, or at least equal to its weight at 50 to 60% throttle. So that is the case for military aircrafts. And for gliders we require quite less amount of thrust to weight ratio, that is nearly 0.5 or something. So this is how you choose your motor, depending on these parameters: the throttle, thrust, and the thrust weight ratio, like depending on the type of plane which you are going to you are going to make, right? So we have chosen a motor of specific type with all these considerations. So what now left is, now what are our battery? So we have calculated two things about battery. We already know two things about battery: the specific energy density, which we know from the battery type, and the weight of battery, which we calculated in the first iteration. So even we are saying it's the first iteration, you will get to know why we called it the first iteration. So weight of the battery and SED values, these are the two things we have for our battery. And what specifications we need to get from these for our battery is the mAh value, number of cells, and the voltage of battery, right? So uh, these parameters are basically defined on the basis of energy required for our aircraft. So we just saw in the weight of battery equation that we are calculating the energy which is required for our cruise condition. Then we are adding the safety factors, that is the propeller efficiency, that is based on the propeller efficiency, the battery efficiency, and the takeoff and landing part of our mission. So taking all those parts into consideration, we get the total energy which will be required from the battery. So on basis of that, we choose these specifications. Like voltage is mostly, like for one cell it is mostly fixed, that is called 1s, and that is nearly equal to 3.7 volts. And what we need to check here is mAh ratings. So you can understand that if taken in appropriate units, mAh into volt will give you the proper energy required for your aircraft. And you can also select the number of cells accordingly if you want to increase the voltage of your battery. Like if you are not getting the proper mAh battery which you need, so you can increase the number of cells, and thus the voltage will be increased, and you can now alter the mAh value in the specific range which is available. So this is how we choose our battery. So we have chosen two major parts of our aircraft, that is the motor and the battery. So like it seems that we have got almost everything, right? So we have got the weight of battery, we have got an estimated total weight, like the first initial weight which we took. We have also got the motor which we want to use for our aircraft. We also got the type of battery or the specifications of battery which we need to use. So it looks like that we have got everything. So we can now start building an aircraft, but that is not the case, right? So why is that not the case? Can anybody tell me? Like what are the issues which we will face if we directly start building? Like what glitch we are facing here after getting the appropriate motor and battery? Can anybody guess that? Yeah. Yes, Sandeep, you're muted. You want to tell us? Oh, okay. Okay, no issues. I'll tell it. Like, so it seems that we have got everything, but it is not quite the case. So why is it not the case? Like, what is the problem? So what happens when we choose a new motor and a new battery weight? Like, we are getting a new motor. We didn't know about its exact weight. We knew about the weight of the propulsion system, but that can also change, like when we choose a new motor. Also, when we choose a battery, it is not essential that you will get the exact battery weight which you had calculated by the equations by after when you buy a battery. So the weight of propulsion system, or more important, which is for us here, that the weight of battery changes. So our entire calculation which we did in the first iteration till now is does not make sense now, because the weight of battery has changed, and accordingly the total aircraft weight will also change. So all the thrust requirement, all the energy requirement which we just thought that these will be the case, and the weight of those values, they will not be the same now. So what do we do now? Yeah, so that is the whole idea of iteration. So we have got a preliminary total weight from historical data. We calculated the battery weight. Now we have again got a new battery weight, or like we have got a battery weight at final. Now according to that weight, according to the weight of that battery, the aircraft weight in total will change. So that will again affect the total energy requirement of our aircraft, and that will in turn again affect the weight of the battery. I want to make this very clear. If anyone has any doubt in this, you can please unmute and ask, like, because it is a very important concept to understand how the iteration is going on. I'll wait for a second here for you to ponder. Okay, so we can move forward, I guess. Yeah, so let us design, let us choose some iteration part. Let us do some actual iteration part. So let us understand this problem statement. So here we are given that our mission requirements is 2 minutes of flight. That is basically called the endurance, like what amount of time you need to fly your aircraft. Also, we need to carry a 3.8 Newton payload. Okay, so 3.8 Newton payload, that is nearly 380 grams. So this is the payload which we need to carry with our aircraft. And also we have been provided by the cruise velocity, that is 20 meter per second. So accordingly, we need to iterate the weight estimation process in this example. And let's look how do we do that. So from the historical data, first we get the necessary components which we need to get. So the total weight, we look up some aircraft which has done some similar kind of mission parameters. So the total weight of that aircraft which we choose from our historical database is 11.5 Newton approximately. Also the L by D value we choose from the historical database, that is 4.009. Also for safety, like, understand that we are asked to design a plane with 2 minutes flight, but if we design a plane for exactly 2 minutes, so that can have some errors, and some small errors may creep in, and that can affect the performance of our flight. That can not finally be exactly 2 minutes, it can be less than that. So for that amount of safety, we take time to be 150 seconds. So we start designing our plane considering that we have to fly for 150 seconds and not just 2 minutes. Also, what we take up again is, so here is some database which we take up, like it is an example of aircraft from one of the database, and depending on that we will get the weight ratios which we discussed earlier. So structural weight ratio which we get from these values will be about 0.52. That is the total structural weight. That is the structural weight in comparison to the total structural weight of aircraft will be about 0.52 of that. Also, we get the propulsion weight ratio from here, and that comes out to be approximately 0.11. The safety factor, as I told about the battery propeller efficiency and the takeoff and landing part, so that comes out to be, as I told, that 0.36, which is, and yeah, so also the specific energy density, as I told you, that this comes out to be 100 to 150 watt hour per kg. That is a value of that is just yeah, like that just depends on the type of battery that which we are using. So let's take it up as 130 for designing our plane, like for the first iteration. So let's see what, so this is the whole data which we require for designing our airplane. So let's see how do we go about actually iterating the weight. Yeah, so let's now get the energy requirement first. That is the first and foremost thing we need to do for, and we will get this for cruise condition, and then by applying the safety factors, we will get the whole energy requirement which we require from the battery. So energy required will be nearly this much amount. So 11.5 is the total weight of aircraft which we assumed for the first iteration. 20 meter per second is the velocity at which aircraft is moving. That is at which the aircraft is cruising. Also, this 150 is the total time of flight which we have to take up. L by D value is 4.009, so we put that here. And this is the safety factor, that is 0.36. So total energy which we require for performing our mission is nearly 23.904 kilojoules. So we have got the energy required. Now what we need is, we need the weight of battery. So let's get the weight of battery. Yeah, so weight of battery will be nearly like this part is the energy required. This will be divided by the specific energy density of the battery, that is 130 in our case. And beware that the units which we used for 130 value was the watt hour per kg, so we need to change that into seconds. That is what brings in this factor of 3600. Also multiply by G, because we have used the units of SED as watt hour per kg. So to get that total weight of battery, we need to multiply with the gravitational acceleration. So when we perform this calculation, we get the weight of battery to be 0.5005 newtons approximately. So yeah, so let's see what happens next. So now what we do is we update the total weight according to this battery weight. So we took up some weight, that is 11.5 Newton for the first iteration. Now we have completed the first iteration by getting the weight of the battery, that is 0.5005 Newtons. Also we have the weight of the payload we require. So we now update the total weight according to the battery weight, like because we didn't know what battery weight the previous aircraft was using, and that need not be the same for ours too. So we update this total weight according to the new battery weight. How do we do that? Remember the equation which we saw earlier, where we incorporated these weight ratios, that was obtained by dividing the total weight of aircraft into 4 parts: the structural, propulsion, payload, and battery. So when we get the ratios here in that, so the equation becomes like this. So the total weight of aircraft is to be defined as the payload weight plus battery weight divided by 1 minus the structural weight ratio minus the propulsion weight ratio. So now what we have is, we have the payload weight defined in our mission requirements. We also have the battery weight defined in our mission requirements. Sorry, we just found the battery weight here. So this 0.5005 newtons is the weight of battery which we just got. And also in the starting of the weight iteration process, we had got these structural and propulsion weight ratios from the historical data. So we put all that in, and the weight nearly comes out to be 11.628 Newton. So you must notice here that this total weight of the aircraft which we are now getting is different from the initial weight which we got. So this is how the weight iteration changes the total weight of our aircraft. And now the iteration process will continue. We will get this as the initial weight of our aircraft. We will put this in this equation for energy requirement. we will get the another weight of the battery, and then again we will get the total weight. So this way the process will go on. And yeah, and we'll also discuss how much time we have to do this all this process, because otherwise it will be a never ending process. But we don't need to do that, we need to get to a particular total weight of aircraft. So this is way, like this example was to explain you how we are actually iterating the weight of our aircraft and how we are getting like different weights in two particular iterations. Yeah. So let's have a quick recap on what we understood through the weight iteration process. So first, what we do is we take up the historical data about the structural and propulsion weight ratio. Then we again go to historical data for the value of L by D, that is majorly equal to 4 to 6, like 4, that majorly ranges from 4 to 6. Like we took in the previous example, we took the L by D value as 4.009. It goes about to 4 to 6. So accordingly, we choose L by D, and this may also depend on altitudes or something. And also we take up the total weight for a similar mission as the initial weight for our iterating process. Then we calculate the weight of battery depending on the energy requirements and the particular specific energy density value of our battery. Then we go about selecting our battery and the motor. Motor we choose up, as I discussed, the motor we choose upon considering the throttle percentage, thrust or the thrust to weight ratio, those things. Then we take up the new battery weights and update the total weight as we just did in the previous example. We again calculate the battery weight depending on the new total weight which we have got, and go over the loop again and again. So how long do we continue this loop? So we continue this loop till the successive total weights start converging. Like what do we mean by converging here? Like if we got, like I got the weight, updated weight after the first iteration in the previous example as 11.628, and the initial weight which we took was about 11.5 newtons. So we go up to iterating this process again and again up to a point when the successive total weights which we obtain in our iterations uh, have a difference of less than a threshold value, which we can decide. Like we can say that we will stop the iteration after a point when we have successive total weights having a difference of 0.0001 kg newtons approximately, or something like that. We can explain that, we can establish that threshold, and up to that point we can continue iterating the weight iteration process. Also, just a note that it's not a quite long procedure which it looks like. In almost all the cases, after 2 or 3 iterations we get a good estimation of weight. Yeah, so if anybody has any doubts here, so we are here at the recap slide of weight iteration, so we can have them now. Yeah, all right, so I don't see any doubts. Yeah, so I will conclude about the weight iteration process. So it is a very basic and flexible approach towards getting the weight of our plane, which we just discussed. The things are always not that easy, which this came out to be. They may turn complex depending on some of the mission requirements. The propulsion weight ratios may change, which we majorly included as constants here. The structural weight ratio is also variable during the design process majorly, and we create CAD models mostly on SolidWorks and use that for estimating structural weights of different iterations in our weight estimation process. Also, our mission weight also, yeah, it also requires some specific parameters. It may also require some specific parameters regarding takeoff or landing. Like we can have some parameter like this much is the maximum takeoff distance which we need to have for our aircraft. So that part of mission we also need to take care of, and that can also affect our weight iteration process. So all this makes weight iteration a much more complex process than what we saw today. But the crux is that This flexible method provides us a great trick to understand weight estimation for some simple and important mission parameters. Yeah, so with this, I would like to conclude the weight iteration part. We have a XFLR5 demo lined up for you where we will basically discuss the wing design and analysis process in XFLR5, how to design a wing, which airfoils to select, and all those parts. So over to Piyush, and he will explain you about XFLR5 wing design analysis. Thank you. If anybody has any doubt at this point, you can ask.
Hello, am I audible?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you know that like how to calculate the weight of an aircraft. So before like you design actual plane like the hardware one, why we first design the plane in XFLR5 and why we perform analysis in XFLR5. So the basic is, let me share my screen first. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like why we first design the plane in software. So I will tell you one like practical scenario that was happened with me, that I thought to like I have designed a pusher plane from like scratch directly in hardware. So what happened is I designed a pusher plane. The motor mount of the pusher plane is at an height of 10 centimeter above the plane. So what happened initially is that the plane nose down directly. Like when I fly the plane, it nose down, like it doesn't fly and it nose down and go into like the land. So it broke. So what's the issue with the plane is there is a thrust which is at height of 10 centimeter and it is providing a nose down movement to the aircraft. So the aircraft will not able to fly and it like directly goes into the land. So that's why we first like design a plane in the software and perform analysis to see that the plane is actually able to fly or not. So yeah, in the week one, you all have like designed the foil. So for the plane analysis, you all have to first design the foil. You can like open the previous foil you have designed. So or else you can like design the new foil as well. So first we will design two foils. One is the symmetric foil and the second is the cambered foil. The symmetric foil is for the tail because we prefer symmetric foil in the tail because of the at zero angle of attack. If tail produces some lift, that is the symmetric airfoil does not produce some lift, but cambered airfoil produces the lift. So if tail produces some lift at zero angle of attack, that is plane is moving in steady flight, then there is nose down movement by the tail and the plane will be unstable plane. So that's why we prefer the symmetric airfoil in the tail. So you have to first define the airfoil, then you have to first perform the airfoil analysis, then only you can design the plane. So you have to perform the airfoil analysis. You can like perform the batch analysis, you know how to do it. I will directly do it first. So there is some range. So it will take some time. Yeah, so yeah, analysis is done. So we first do the analysis of this foil and then we go to the wing and plane design. So this is how you design a plane. So then there is a plane option, then there is a define a new plane. You can name whatever you want to name. Then there are four parts: main wing, elevator, fin. Fin is the vertical tail. then wing 2. If you want to design a biplane, then you use 2 wings, the main wing and the second wing. So we will not going in the biplane part. So first we will define the main wing. So here, this is the position of the airfoil. So you have the 2 segment given here. That is, you can see that one is that 0, this is y equal to 0 and this is y equal to 1. So the wing span is 2 meter. So yeah, you can choose the foil. We have designed the 2 foils. So we will use the NACA 2412, that is the cambered one. You can give some dihedral. Yeah, so and this you can also like insert a section in between or like before. So if you insert some section, then you can like in this way you can design an elliptical wing also. Like you can give around 20 to 30 sections and like decrease the length of code. And in this way you can also design the elliptical wing, but it is very hard to design. So yeah, you can see that the chord is different. The tip chord and the root chord are different. So this is some tapered. You can also give some twist angle as well to reduce the induced drag. So yeah, we can give some twist angle as well. So twist angle is here. You can give the twist for here. Now we will give the Z little up because at 0 there is a singularity occur. So to do the analysis, we will give some Z initially so that the 0 doesn't count in. So yeah, this is how you can define the elevator. You can choose the symmetrical foil in the elevator. I will not changing the datas. You can like change the datas according to you, like the mission requirement and all. So yeah, you can define the fin as well, the symmetric airfoil part. And this is how you define this. So your plane is here. So yeah, you can also like add body in the plane as well. From here you can add the body as well. This is how the body added. You can change the body as well, but to do the analysis, we will just remove the body. So this is how you design a plane. Then it comes, then now you know all the weights that of your plane, like propulsion system and servos and etc. like any payload weight and anything. So what you do is you define the inertia of this plane. So here is the option to define inertia. So yeah, what we do is we know that by like performing the stability analysis that the CG lies at c/4 of the chord. Like so, we like added a point mass at c/4 of like if your weight is 1 kg, then you added this. Your chord is around, I guess, 114 centimeter. So you can add a CG at 0.4. So this is how your CG look like. You can see that the CG is here. You can like shift the CG at whatever point you want. So by changing the CG, we can see that the plane is stable or not. So in the next week, when you are performing the stability analysis, you will shift the location of CG to see that at which position the plane is most stable. So you can define the different point masses, like here there is 2 servo, then there is a payload here, and you can also add some tail mass as well. So this is how you can add masses. So now when your plane is ready with all the masses, then you define an analysis here. So you have 4 options for analysis. We choose mostly the fixed lift analysis. This analysis gives you the lift is always equal to weight. So this is for cruise part. So the aircraft at different angle of attack, aircraft adjusts its speed to change the lift, so that lift is always equal to weight and plane is like flying in steady level flight. So we do the type 2 fixed lift analysis, but for the RC plane we do the beta range analysis. This will like give you more flexibility. It will show you that different lifts at different angle of attack. So yeah, for RC plane we use beta range, but for normal we use the fixed lift. So this is how you do it. When you click on the analysis, this is how. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, 1 second. So yeah, we have to like give the wing as well. We have to add the wing mass as well. Yes. As there are some error. Yeah, so error is because I have not specifically mentioned each dimensions. So error is coming because of that. So first you have to properly select all the dimension of the plane. So yeah, first we will have to like select the all dimension of the plane and weight accordingly. So because of this, the analysis is not be able to done. So it will take time to properly mention uh, all the weights and dimension. So I have one plane ready, like I designed it just before the session. So yeah, this is how this plane look like. So this is normal plane. So you can see that when we define the analysis of this plane, you first like select all the correct dimensions, and then you will see that the analysis will, I designed the beta range analysis. So you can see that all the dimensions are exact. So yeah, this is how you design this analysis, and you can see that the free stream is here. You can see that wingtip vortices is clearly visible. When you increase the angle of attack, the wingtip vortices increases. You can see that the induced drag increases when angle of attack increases. So this is how the plane analysis works. You can also see the moment, how the moment will look like. You can see that the wing is producing this green shows the lift. When you reduces the angle of attack, the lift decreases. You can see that the lift decreases, vortice, the induced drag also decreases. Plane analysis. Yeah, so that's it in the plane analysis. If anyone has any doubt, like you can ask. Or
Yeah, so I don't see any doubt here. So we will conclude the session now. So what today we looked up is the different configurations of wing. We looked up the whole iteration process, weight iteration process, how we estimate the weight of different components. And we also have an overview. We also had an overview on designing a wing and analyzing it on XFLR5. It also provided this in the resource materials. You can look that up, and we'll soon share the assignment also for this week. And in the next week, we will have session on stability analysis, basically using XFLR5, and also on the using theoretical knowledge like of stability. So yeah, all that we will have, and in the week after that, we will that is in the final week, we'll have the final assignment. Yeah, so thank you for coming to the session, and we conclude the session now.